Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Ealing Road podcast. This week we will be going through Brentford's 4-3 win at home to Ipswich on Saturday. You may notice that this is not Mike's voice. Unfortunately, Mike's not very well today, so he's left it in our capable hands. So we'll see how we get on with this one. Callum, how are we doing, mate?
All well, all well. It could have been a different story if that goal didn't go in. Miranda, she was standing in front of me on Saturday, and quite frankly, she could tell I was pissed off. So, at the end of the day, I'm a happy man right now. 3 points in the bag, and we're going through to the quarterfinals in the League Cup tomorrow. So, very happy all. Thank you very much.
Good stuff. Miranda, how are we doing?
Yeah, good. Happy. Especially, I think immediately after Saturday, wasn't sure how to feel, but yeah, happy now.
Good.
Better
good,
about it.
Good. And Dan, how are we doing?
I'm all right. I wasn't that impressed with it though. Although we won, I think this is probably the least impressed I've been with a victory in a long time. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into it, please do remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, follow us on our socials as well. That's at Ealing Road on Twitter and at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram, as well as Mike's channel. I know he's not here, but do drop a subscription to Mike Live in 5. I think that's it. We hear it every week. Mike Live in 5. His YouTube channel is really picking up. It's doing well. Right. We'll start with the tweet of the week. And I've put my own tweet as the tweet of the week, which was Ipswich fans singing "How shit must you be? We're winning away." And I said, I'll help you answer that question. Very, very shit. Now, at 2-0 down, I don't think that I could be, many people would be disagreeing with me. Yeah, I'm glad you all agree with that one.
I don't think you're too wrong, to be honest.
No,
I mean, at the time, you definitely weren't wrong. And even by the end, I don't think it was a great performance, to be honest. But obviously, the result is what matters the most.
That is exactly right. Exactly right. I think we've lost Callum because he's absolutely frozen on my screen at the moment. But Dan, news has just broken that Erik ten Hag has been sacked by Man United. Is that a real missed opportunity for us last week to get him sacked?
It is, and I think it's been coming for a long time, and I'm surprised it's taken till now for them to do it, because any other Big Six team, despite winning the FA Cup last season, would have ended that relationship long time ago.
You get a tour of the house to everyone. I hope you're
For those not watching on YouTube at the moment, Callum is currently walking around the house to try and get a bit of a better Wi-Fi signal. But Dan, mate, you're spot on. You're absolutely right there. Miranda, you was the one that mentioned it to everyone in the chat. How are you feeling after that? I feel like we've missed an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also fearful now. What if they go for Thomas Frank? I don't think he'll go. I'm sorry, I'm bringing it up again. But
no, mate, we'll talk about that another time, shall we? Let's move on to the game. Callum, what's your initial thoughts after it?
Try to find connection.
My initial thoughts. Well, we got. That's a good thought. This isn't going very well, is it? I mean, geez, unbelievable. No, look, we got the 3 points. That's what matters at the end of the day. Look, there were certain areas in there. Yes, we should have done a lot better at. I mean, the first goal I thought was a little unfortunate with how the ball fell to them, and then the second goal was, not ideal. And then the third one, well, that was where I think we really need to pick up on it. I compared it to which game was it? It was the Wolves game where they scored a very similar goal from that side and crossed it into the box and scored a this very, very similar goal. But Ipswich played us to a T. I compared it to our performance at Manchester United. They pressed us in such a fashion where they didn't allow us to have the ball. When we did have the ball, we were, being put under so much pressure that so many, mistakes were happening. And, we could have been 3-0 down, 4-0 down in the first half. But, we came back nicely and we got those 3 points. So Dan, let's be happy. Yeah, let's be happy. We won. And we were first. And we were first on match of the day yet again. So great news.
At 2-0, it wasn't looking very good, was it? But no, you're right. We've come away with 3 points, which is the most important thing. Miranda, when the lineup come out, I was a little bit surprised because I did think that Kevin Schade would still start. After we did the Man United review, I said this would be a good game for a player like Kevin Schade to come in and, do what he does. And KLP was out on that left wing. And we also had no Chris Ayer in the squad at all. And Roslev played at right back, which I don't think Roslev had the worst game. But when you saw that lineup come out, Miranda, what was you thinking?
I mean, personally, and I know that it's also once you actually saw the game, I was pleased that KLP was in the starting lineup, especially after his performance in the game. Eventually, I mean, Roslev coming back in. I mean, that obviously I was injured, so you had to make that change anyway. I guess I assume I would have started had he not had his is it a foot injury? I think Frank said, isn't it? So I guess that was a forced change. I do think I would have preferred Ayer in the starting lineup, but that's just what had to happen. Just as a little side note, she's going to kill me for saying this. It was more so my mum's reaction when the team came out. Well, she's going to kill me, but I'm going to say it anyway. When it said that I was obviously not in, he's been injured. My mum's description of him is that he is like Bambi on effing ice. And he's an absolute sick note is what she's described him as. But I think that she meant it in a way of like frustration that she obviously like after the game as well and before was disappointed that I wasn't there because she thinks he would have made the difference. So little shout out there for you, Mum, but I'm sorry for airing out what she said.
Yeah, look, I did think that Roslev actually had quite a good game, but maybe that's because I didn't feel anything really went down that side. A lot of their stuff sort of beat us through the middle, which sort of leads on quite nicely, Dan, to their first two goals, not so much the third. The first two goals, I thought that Pinnock was really, really out of position for both of the goals. The first one, there's a slide ball through to Schwadix after Collins does actually well to defend the ball. It just ricochets straight back to Hurst, I think it was, that put the ball in, and Schwadix scores. But it's not been a good start to the season, really, for Pinnock, has it?
No, and this is one of the worst games you've seen him play. I think for the first one, he was almost going out to close the man down, but didn't get there in time. And he was in no man's land by the time he got there because he wasn't in his defensive line and he wasn't tight enough to anybody. And then the second one, I think Collins had to come over again because Pinnock was just slightly out of position and that left a gap in the defence. And it's unlike him, and I do wonder whether he is struggling more than maybe like to Collins to adapt to how we're trying to play this season, to try and be more aggressive like we are this season. Although I don't think it's unusual for us to press and for the defenders to sometimes go man for man on opposition players, but I think he is struggling. I don't for one moment think we should drop him yet. I don't think Ben Mee would be quite up to speed either, if I'm completely honest, at this stage in his career. I know there was someone posted on Facebook, didn't they, about they were trying to argue that Collins should be out of the team.
Yeah, that one was crazy.
Yeah,
I didn't even be bothered. I didn't even. Well, actually, I did react to it as I should do. To be honest with you, I was like, "This is nonsense, absolute nonsense." Who thinks that is a good idea? No one. There you go.
No one at all. Now, does the situation change when we get Rico Henry back and we have a left back, which means Sepp or I no longer have to play there, and we have an extra centre back available? Does Collins then need to pick his game up a little bit, Miranda? What do you think?
I mean, I agree with what Dan was saying about Pinnock, to be honest with you. I think, which is going against that post that we saw as well, I feel like Collins isn't, I don't know the right phrase to use. He's not dragging Pinnock along with him. That's not the right phrase. But I just feel like Pinnock, it wasn't all on him. I don't think that both goals were completely on him. But I do feel like he has those moments where if it continues, you probably would replace him in the starting lineup. So if what you're saying is, yeah, Rico Henry comes back in. Oh, we've lost Callum.
Yes, carry on for now.
If Rico Henry comes back in, I don't think Collins is in trouble personally.
No.
But I think with the goals, yes, Pinnock, like you mentioned, Dan, in no man's land for that first goal. Second goal, he does slip, but you got to play to the whistle. You can't. I get it. You know, if clearly Ogbene was really badly injured, but you know, there's questions of yes, he slips, but then you've got other people who had to maybe cover off those goals. It was a nice ball through from Ipswich, but I know you mentioned Roslev as well. Just going back to him, he was playing very high up the pitch, but then that left us exposed to a caught on the press. So,
yeah, well, it is a difficult one to call, isn't it, when you're looking at it kind of from an outside perspective rather than being on the pitch. But that's all we can do as fans sometimes, isn't it? But yeah, the second goal, like you say, he does slip, and Ogbene is injured. On which I would like to say, I hope that that's not as bad as injury as it did look. He went off on a stretcher, former Brentford player as well. Hopefully, that's not as bad as it looked. So fingers crossed for Ogbene. Let's go on to our goals. The first goal, I was going to throw it to Callum, but he's obviously just disappeared for a moment. So Dan, KLP, I think, does absolutely brilliantly with that first goal. That touch inside away from Clark to get away from the player, and then he beats Calvin Phillips, I think it is, so the ball brings it across to Janelt. Through to Janelt. That shade of KLP's directness is what I've been calling for all season, and it worked to a T for that goal. How good was Keane this weekend?
Yeah, we obviously needed it at the time in the game as well. I think just prior to that, I thought that we were very quick in trying to just rush the ball out from goal kicks. Like Flecken had some batteries in him, and he was just determined to get rid of the ball as soon as possible. And I was just calling for everyone to slow down at that point because they clearly had the momentum. They were putting us under so much pressure, and we needed to slow things down at that moment to try and wrestle momentum back. And I think we did eventually go long with one goal kick, and it did slowly go back into our favour. But yeah, at the right time, KLP stepped up when we needed him, because at that time in the game, we needed to score. And he obviously rode those challenges. It was a slick move with Janelt and obviously Whistler as well. It's great to have him back too. Yeah, he was really good, and he absolutely tormented Clark at right back, who I felt a bit sorry for.
Yeah, we'll go on to Clark in a little bit. Yeah.
And it's great to see, and I think it justified him starting ahead of Sharda. I think I said on the podcast last week I would like to see him start and Sharda maybe come off the bench for that last half an hour. But I actually thought, hindsight's a good thing, because obviously Brian went on to score, but I actually thought he played a better game than Brian, and I would have maybe taken Brian off instead of KLP late on in the game when Sharda came on. But obviously Brian goes on to score, so can't blame Thomas Frank.
I remember when we saw Sharda warming up, and I actually said it needs to be KLP that goes off, because although he didn't score, he needed that fan appreciation, I felt. And he did get a standing ovation as he walks off the pitch. So I think that he absolutely deserved it. The man of the match, that is. The second goal, I think Wiss has been absolutely robbed here, by the way. There's no way that this should be going down as an own goal for Clark again. But Miranda, I think Wisser should feel robbed.
Yep, 100%. They were saying this on Match of the Day as well. They said it should be given to him. 100% agree. I don't like that that's gone down as an own goal. He obviously didn't know at the time it had gone down as an own goal. So if anything, it was at least motivating him to try and go for that hat trick. But yeah, that's unfair.
Yeah, absolutely.
Clark, he's had a bad enough time.
Exactly, he had a horrid game. Let's talk about it now, actually, shall we? So he think I saw a stat which is he is only the second ever player to score an own goal, get sent off, and give away a penalty in one game. And this game happened to be his full Premier League debut. What a torrid game for Harry Clark, Dan.
Yeah, well, I mean, you might get that with some of his players. I don't know much about him, but he may well have been part of the League One squad 2 years ago. And that, to step up so quickly as some of Ipswich players have had to do, it's a really big change, and it's obviously a really big level to acclimatise to. And I think we took advantage of that. An inexperienced player. I know Ipswich had some injuries, so obviously he hadn't been starting before then. And I think we took advantage of that. I mean, KLP, I don't think is particularly quick compared to some other wingers, but he still got round him, really well. All he had to get was a first touch, really, and then Clark was always backpedaling and had to pull him back. And obviously, from that, we gained a penalty and a free kick in a good position. And if that second foul was just a couple of yards further forward, he could have given away another penalty. So yeah, he had a nightmare, and I feel a bit sorry for him, to be honest. Hopefully, he gets another chance in the Premier League at some point.
Well, while we're talking about it, I don't know the answer to this one, and I don't know if you two would know the answer to this one. If he is the second player to have done that, who do we think the first player to have done that is? But I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know if either of you do. So feel free to drop that down in the comments below. Who was the other player to have given away a penalty, scored an own goal, and got sent off in the same game? Just before we move on to the third goal, I want to talk about the build-up play for the second goal, because it does start from Flecken, goes out to Roslev, into Brian, Damsgaard, Wisser, and then there's the goal. I'm seeing shades of that every game, because the Brian goal against Crystal Palace at the start of the season, that was very much similar to that. I think one of the goals that we scored against Wolves as well was very much similar to that. And I would say the Southampton one is one of the Southampton ones which wasn't them far arsing around with the ball around the edge of their penalty area, was like that as well. We seem to have got that nailed down to a T at the moment, don't we, Miranda?
Yeah, I mean, I think all credit to Damsgaard in that respect as well, because I think I mentioned earlier at the start of the first half, Roslev was sitting much higher up the pitch than Brian was, and it wasn't quite linking up, it wasn't quite working, and Damsgaard was originally more on the left of the pitch. And then when he was moving across, it seems a bit more, he's got that freedom. I think he's very clearly got that freedom. And he was moving more towards the right-hand side, supporting that link-up play to Brian, to Wisser. And then later on, obviously, working on the left as well. So obviously that contributed to pretty much all of the goals. So I think that, to me, the credit needs to go to Damsgaard with that and the link-up play.
What does Damsgaard have to do to score a goal, by the way? Because he had that chance, didn't he? Was it at 3-2 or at 3-3? And Muric does get down to make a really good save.
3-2, I think.
Yeah,
3-2.
3-2.
Yeah, he could have put the game to bed. What does Damsgaard have to do to score a goal? I'm gagging for a Damsgaard goal. I tell you, I really cannot wait for the day it comes in the Premier League. When that chance drops to him, I thought, this is going to be it. This is going to be it. But Dan, let's talk about the penalty. You touched on it already. Keane's first touch, by the way, to get past the player is absolutely brilliant, isn't it? He does it perfectly every single time. But he gets the wrong side of Harry Clark, and Harry Clark brings him down. The referee did initially give a free kick for it being outside the penalty area. Now, I know that you're in the North Stand, Miranda and I are in the West Stand. I thought it was a penalty straight away. I didn't think it was outside the box. But from the North Stand, what did you think?
It was maybe a bit harder to see where I was because I'm up by the middle of the pitch as well, by the halfway line. But I mean, the most important thing is to get to the right decision, and we got to the right decision.
Yeah.
I think the contact probably did start outside the box, but obviously it continued as he got into the box. Yeah. I think that diagonal, by the way, was on so many times in that game, and all he needed to do was that first touch, and he's round him. Maybe Clark got too tight to him and should have just stood off him a bit. But yeah, and we need to talk about Brian's penalty record as well now, because he's slowly closing in on Ivan Toney. He's not missed yet. No. Obviously, we know Toney missed one, and the more and more penalties that we get, he seems to have a similar technique. He keeps putting them away. I thought this one was quite high. I don't think he necessarily meant to put it into the roof of the net as much as he did. But, I'm excited to see if he can continue that record. And obviously, we've been lucky in the last few years to have quite reliable penalty takers. It's hard to remember, apart from that Toney one against Newcastle, when the last time he missed was. So it's nice to have that. And his goal record in general, Brian, now, even though he didn't have the best game, I don't think, at the weekend, only behind Haaland, 8 goals in 9 games. It really kind of does feel, unfortunately, that he's outgrown us a little bit, and he's one of the best players in the league now.
Absolutely. And he's the first Brentford player, I think I saw a stat, he's the first Brentford player to have reached 50 goal contributions in the Premier League as well. So, yeah, Dan, I think you're right. We're probably seeing the best we've seen of Brian and on Burmo, but unfortunately, it might be the last this season we see of him. But he's also scored in all 5 home games that we've had so far. I don't know what the record of that is for us as a football club. He may have already broken that record for consecutive home games scored
I
in
think
as well.
he equaled it, and I think it was his own record that he equaled. But what I was going to say as well is maybe what we need to see slightly more from him is maybe against some of the really big clubs, he doesn't always quite turn up.
No.
And maybe that's a very last step if he is to be seen as really one of the best players in the league. But that's probably being a bit harsh given that obviously in those games we have less territory and it's harder just to get on the ball in the first place. But that's where, if anything, he may have not had the greatest games in the odd game against maybe the bigger sides, but that's the next step for him.
He's becoming a very good striker to the point where Ivan Toney did it a couple of times, where even if he had a bad game, he would pop up with a goal and it completely changes your outlook on his performance because, like you say, I didn't think he had a really, really great game, but he's popped up with 2 really important goals and it's completely changed the conversation that we're having about him. But I think you're spot on there. I do think there's a big career ahead of him. He's only 25 still, and he could definitely do it in the Champions League with one of those clubs. Let's talk about the equaliser, the 3-3 goal. I think that we have to do so much better in stopping these crosses coming into the box, Miranda, because the Strand Larsen goal that we conceded against Wolves felt like a carbon copy of that goal. So how do we prevent it? What do you do now to stop that ball from coming into the box? Because we don't seem to be able to defend it, but we can't stop it. So where do we have to improve here?
Well, I hate to bring him up again, but Pinnock's on the wrong side of his man. Why this was happening a lot at points in the game as well, where a lot of Ipswich's players are just left unmarked. So why is Delap unmarked? Like, why is no one marking him? I think someone needs to answer to that. It is, again, that sloppy defending at the end of the game. So whether it is just that, I get tracking back a little bit, before they equalised, we were trying to go for that 4th goal.
Yeah.
It just was not forthcoming at all. You had chances from Damsgaard, KLP, Wisser. We were great on the ball. We mentioned Brian. Yes, he was much quieter, but we just didn't seem dangerous. And then it's almost like that pushing, that pressing that we were putting in then gets a comeuppance of some sort. So I don't know. I think that then Frank really needs to be looking at, why are we leaving these players unmarked? Why are we on the wrong side of why Pinnock, Collins? Why are they on the wrong side of those who are in the box? And it just felt like a lot, like we'd wasted all that possession. We'd wasted time with our crosses into the box before their goal. So yeah, lots of questions really to be answered, because it was exactly the same as Wolves. And I think that's what that left that sour taste after the game. It was like, we've conceded 3 again at home. When is this going to stop?
Yeah. So I have made a point that we will go on to as well. But that their equaliser was in the 86th minute, if I do remember correctly. It was very, very late in the 90 anyway. Miranda, you've mentioned it already, so let's talk about it. The crosses into the box that we was putting in, their centre-back, I don't know who the centre-back was winning absolutely everything. And it was very clear throughout the game that the way we was going to beat them was if we kept the ball on the ground and played it around them. The first 2 goals speak volumes to the performance that we had when the ball was on the ground and we was playing the football. Dan, the one chance that comes to mind, a cross comes in, Pinnock wins the header at the back post, drops to Collins inside the 6-yard box, and he lifts it over the bar. We talked about him having a really good start to the season and maybe him pulling Pinnock along with him. How good do you think it would have been for him to have scored that winning goal?
I think he's already got confidence. He scored this season as well already, and I think he's definitely been the better performing defender that we've had this season. Obviously, it's not his area of expertise, firing a ball in with his feet in the box like that. So I don't blame him too much. It probably should have been a goal. I think Wissa earlier on definitely should have scored when he was through again, and he'd normally take those every day of the week, and then it'd be 4-2 at the time. Yeah. I think generally we shouldn't have been in that situation, because against 10 men, you should be seeing the game out better than that. And I know it only takes one chance, and that's the only chance they really had. I don't know why Delap didn't start for them, by the way. But and we knew Leif Davis as well, with the ball in, what he's capable of with all his assists last season in the Championship.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, he should have scored, Collins, but I don't think we can really be blaming him. Obviously, it didn't matter in the end anyway.
It was a difficult one. It was a bouncing ball, and he did get underneath it a little bit, but inside the 6-yard box like that, you'd at least hope he'd hit the target or it get blocked, not fly over the crossbar. But Miranda, let's talk about the winning goal. Buemo's goal obviously sneaks in, which I thought was a rubbish cross, by the way. I thought that was just a rubbish cross, which is then snuck in at the back post. And in my eyes, Muric has to be doing so much better as a goalkeeper with that. I mean, I'm happy that it's snuck in at the back post. But from the West Stand, Miranda, you said that you'd gone, turned around. What was you thinking?
Just those crosses, we kept putting those crosses, or Brian specifically kept putting those crosses into the box. And it didn't matter how many people were packed into that penalty area. Nothing happened. Nothing was going on. And so I just thought, here we go, another one. And I think I have to, I'm quite short, so I have to lean over to look over all the bodies anyway to see where it's going. And I just thought, no, not even bothering. And then the next thing, obviously it just erupts in the West Stand anyway. And I just thought, oh my Lord, I can't do this every single week. The goalkeepers had an absolute nightmare. But it's amazing how it just evades everyone in that penalty area and goes into that far corner. It almost feels like you're watching it in slow motion when you're watching it back. Wow. Again, is it intended as a cross? But who cares? It went in.
Absolutely. Who cares? We was almost very, 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 very close to having another different conversation, because they take kickoff, go down the other end, and what I will say is I don't know what Jensen's doing. Yeah, the ball comes to him inside our penalty area. Just get it gone. Just get it gone, and he kicks it into the back of their attacker. I think it might have even been Leif Davis, Dan. And the ball drops to Delap, takes a really good touch away from the defender and a whipping shot away from Mark Flecken and hits that post. Dan, I don't know what it was like from the North Stand, but we thought, for starters, that Flecken had saved it, and then their players running to try and keep it in. We could have been having a totally different conversation again.
Yeah, I was a bit closer to that one. We've seen him score those goals as well this season. He scored several goals like that this season, and firstly, they did our kickoff routine that we actually didn't really try. We just passed it back and kind of sat on the ball in defence, which confused me a little bit. Maybe it's because I wasn't in the team to win the initial flick on, but I'm sure we could have done it with Vandenberg, perhaps. It worries me a bit when players come back from injury, and I feel even Wissa in the first 10 minutes, his touch was a bit off, and it takes a bit of time, I think, to get up to speed, even mentally in the game, like you're back in game. And I think that may have been Jensen just being a bit sloppy, having been out for so long. And I think he may sometimes be guilty of taking silly touches in his own third, sometimes anyway, instead of actually just getting rid of it, especially at that stage in the game where there's barely any time left. And I thought Ipswich were really quite unlucky not to get anything out of this, but we'll take it. There'll be games where we don't win, where we feel that we deserve to win. So we will take it, definitely, because I think it will even itself out.
Absolutely. Do you know what? I do feel a little bit sorry for Ipswich fans as well, because I feel like we've absolutely robbed them this game. I didn't think that we were good enough to deserve all 3 points, and they almost walked away with a point anyway. So yeah, I'm glad we've won. I'm glad we got the 3 points, but it's the first time this season I don't think that we've really deserved to win. Now, one point that I've made and I've noted down here is the goals that we've scored, the goals that we've conceded. We've conceded 18 goals this season in 9 games, obviously two a game on average, and only the bottom 3 teams, being Ipswich, Wolves, and Southampton, have conceded more goals than we have. And then we look at the other end of the spectrum. Obviously, we've also scored 18 goals, so we've got a 0 goal difference, and only Chelsea and Man City have scored more goals than we have. Now, they said it on Match of the Day, and they said it in the highlights that if you want a bit of entertainment, you come down to the Gtech this season. But at what point do we need to realise that although we look very good going forwards, defensively we're still quite shaky, conceding very sloppy goals? Dan, what really needs to change?
It's weird, isn't it? It's a balance, because when we first got promoted, I feel like, if anything, we were quite solid defensively, and I feel like that's why maybe we did better against the bigger teams and not necessarily against the teams around us. Now we seem to have the opposite problem, where we can't keep those bigger teams out when they put us under relentless pressure. I would like to think it's due to still kind of adapting the way we're playing and getting used to that and acclimatizing to that, and also not having natural fullbacks and obviously various injuries going on at the same time, which means that it's not always a consistent team together. But also some of these concerns date back to last season.
Yeah.
And I feel like, again, we are conceding in 2s rather than 1s at times. Why? Like, we did it at Manchester United. I'm pretty sure we did it at Tottenham, conceded 2 very close together. We did it again this weekend against Ipswich. And I feel like in certain areas of the game, like I said earlier, we just need to slow things down. We need to adapt a bit. We need to maybe go long with a few goal kicks and just change and adapt, even if it's just for a 5-10 minute period, until we've wrestled back some momentum, and then we can start trying to play out again. I think we've got to be a bit cleverer when we do this, rather than incessantly trying to get the ball down, play it out really quick. I mean, they should have definitely scored a 3-0 goal when Flecken played it out really, really quick to Yanel or someone. It was instantly closed down. And we need to adapt in those moments, because Ipswich are all over us at that stage, and we need to slow it down, and we need to just go long for a bit, even if it's not what we want to do, and just wrestle some momentum back, and then we can start playing football again.
Absolutely. Looking across the team, obviously Mike likes to ask Callum to do his player ratings, and if he was here, I'd like to think everyone would kind of get a 5 or a 6, except for Keane Lewis-Potter and Damsgaard, who maybe were our standout players for this game. Miranda, is that Keane Lewis-Potter's best game for us that we've seen him have, or can you think of one in mind where he's probably had more of an impact in the game? Because for me, that's his standout performance for us in the Brentford shirt.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that he was outstanding. I think that confidence is just growing, and it so early in the season, it's really lovely to see. You mentioned earlier how gutting it is not to see Damsgaard get a goal, but I felt the same about KLP. I felt like, I'd been love to see him score at the weekend, to be honest with you. He won the penalty, he won the free kick. I know the free kick didn't necessarily amount to anything, but he still caused so much trouble for Clark. It basically was the cause of him getting sent off. He just had that constant desire to push us forward, to attack down that left-hand side. So I thought he was brilliant, especially in that second half. And obviously there was that lovely post-match interview that he did as well, which was just, you could see he was lost for words, bless him. So that was really nice to see as well.
Yeah. He's definitely solidified his place, hasn't he, in that starting lineup. Now, going to use that as a bit of a segue for us to move on to the Fulham game. Obviously, that is Monday night, so that's a week from today, that Monday night. Dan, do you make any changes going into that game, or what's the sort of team that you're looking at?
If Aya is back, I assume he will come back in. Otherwise, I don't think so. We always seem to have this conversation about whether Yanel needs to be part of the midfield 3, and I'm very sure at the moment that Thomas Frank is going to keep him in that midfield 3. I wouldn't mind, again, having maybe a more attacking third option there, but given how we've been defending in recent weeks, maybe we do need Norgard and Yanel just to keep things as solid as we can in defence. This obviously is our first away game where we can consider the opposition as our equals. I think we're a point ahead of them. I know obviously Manchester United quite bad at the moment. So I feel like that one was probably the first away game we consider our equals. But in terms of club size as well, I think that one is. I wouldn't make any other changes. I don't think at this stage. I don't really think we can expect anyone else new back as well. And also, I think we should go strong in the cup too on Tuesday night, because it's 6 days then before we have a league game.
yes.
And
Sorry.
we're going really far into this cup run now. And if we win this, there's not that many teams left. And it will be so exciting to see how far we can go in this. And it's a really winnable game we got if we take it seriously.
Yes. Sorry, I completely eluded that game, haven't I? And I totally forgot that is happening tomorrow night. Yeah, we are at Sheffield Wednesday. Miranda, just give me a little quick one. Do you think that we should go for a full strength team and go for a little bit of a cup run like Dan's saying? Or do you play it safe knowing the number of injuries that we do have in the team at the moment? Do you play it safe, or do you go for it and actually have a bit of a cup run?
I'd say, yeah, I'd agree, go for it. I would agree with just thinking about Fulham as well, because you've still got to think if you're gonna not change too many things for Fulham, and I agree with if Eyes Fit Eye comes back in, and I would start KLP for Fulham. So I would maybe suggest I would have Sharda in for the cup game. They're still then playing at full strength.
Yep.
I'm not too sure what other changes I would make. Obviously, assuming he won't be fit for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So you're sticking with what you've got there. Do you bring me in instead for the cup game? Maybe give him a little run in. I'm not sure.
I'm kind of hoping that we see Jensen get some minutes just to get him built up ready for Monday. And I would also really, really like to see Rico Henry involved, even just in the match day squad, because he's played in a couple of behind closed doors friendlies. We don't know where he's at. He doesn't have to play. I just need to see that he's there on the bench and he still is a Brentford player, still exists as a Brentford player. So let's hope he is involved. But I think you're right. This might be a good game for Sharda. But these cup games are always tricky to predict, aren't they? So let's just go out there and win it. And like you say, Dan, we're quite far into this. I think the next round's quarterfinal, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got a great draw as well. So we've got to make the most of this, and you never know what we can do. And it would be so. Imagine that being like a major final at Wembley. Like we've never done that before.
Never done that before. But let's get through tomorrow first. Let's get through tomorrow first. Yeah. Well, Mike's already planning his trips to Wembley already, isn't he? Really?
Yeah, that's where he is today.
That's where he is. Yeah, really. Let's jump back to Fulham. They've had a bit of a mixed start to the season. We all thought that they started really well, but they've now played 9 games but they've drawn 3, lost 3, and won 3. So they're in a bit of a mix and match season. But I did think that they had a good start. Miranda, is this? Well, let's ignore the United game now. Is this the perfect opportunity for us to start turning those good performances away from home into 3 points? And I can't really think of a better place to do it.
Yeah, Monday night under lights against Fulham. It's got to be done. It's got to be done. Bragging rights, but I also think to turn our away form back to where it needs to be. Because I can't remember who I was talking to about this, but when you look at the away games we've had on paper, it's easy to say, oh, well, yeah, we're going to lose that one. We're going to lose that one, just based on the teams that you're playing. But we know how we've performed in those away games. So we know those feelings of disappointment. So we just need to have the same performance-wise at Fulham and actually deliver and just try not to concede. That would be nice. Just not concede a goal would be great.
It'd be nice to go there and come away with our first clean sheet of the season as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think that is a really good place for us to wrap this week up. Again, guys, please do remember to like and subscribe and comment down below that player who was the first player to be sent off, score an own goal, and give away a penalty in one game, because I can't remember for the life of me who that is. Drop us a follow on our socials, as you see across the screen, at the Ealing Road on Twitter and at the Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. We may be back for a Fulham preview, but I know we didn't do that last season because Mike didn't want to. So let's see how we do with that one. But for now, Miranda, Dan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you. Up the bees.
Up the bees. Up the bees.